Welcome to Occupations, the podcast, where we discuss what it's like to hold specific jobs. Occupations is brought to you by lotsofmaps.com, where you fulfill your vintage map gifting needs. Visit lotsofmaps.com.
Hi, and welcome to Occupations, the podcast. We're back. I'm Andy Jaglinzer, and I am today with Alex Cook, who is a muralist in the greater Boston area. And muralists, wow, what's that all about? We're about to find out. He's got a very cool job, and he does some very cool things and very inspirational stuff for people all over the world. Not just the Boston area, but all over the world. He's done a lot of traveling, and he's going to tell us a lot about that. So welcome, Alex Cook. How are you?
Thanks so much. I'm great. Good to be here.
Great. Thanks for being here. Or actually, I'm at your place. So thanks for being here. Okay. Yes, we have a mobile show, so we're willing to go to you if you got a good story. Alex's job is very, very cool. Alex, tell me a little bit about what it is that you do. What is a muralist, first of all? I think we all know what a mural is, but let's just assume nobody knows what a mural is.
Sure. So I make paintings on buildings, interior, exterior, all over the place, different subject matter, different kinds of organizations, individuals that I work with. Often it's schools, but it's businesses, churches. Sometimes I just have a good idea and want to do it and find some way to get that thing into a public place. But it's all art making in public.
So I know your history is of art. I've known you for many, many years now, and I can't think of a moment when you have not been artistic in one way or another since I've known you. I know that you went to school for art, right? Mm-hmm. And that progressed you towards other things. So let's find out a little bit about how you got to be a muralist. So let's start at the beginning. So I know you went to school down in Savannah, Georgia, right?
Well, I did my first year at the Savannah College of Art and Design, but I did the majority of my college schooling at UMass Amherst. So I always loved making pictures, going back to when I was a kid. And then in high school, I had a couple of friends who we all really had that kind of artistic bent, just making pictures for the joy of it, kind of making pictures to help us figure out who we are and what our identity is, and that teen time when you're trying to figure things out. And that was a big deal for me when I first understood that I could kind of explore ideas through making pictures. I could learn about myself. I could learn about my relationships. I could learn about, basically anything I was concerned with, fear, joy, sex, everything, just like it all flowed into pictures. And then, once I learned that, it was like art is front and center, the most important thing.
How old were you at that time when you really felt like, this is me, this is what I am destined to be?
Like 20, 21, 22.
Yep.
And then, so I'm also taking classes in art. So it's all kind of working together, learning the techniques, but first and foremost being interested in the ideas and the feelings. And then the big drop off, school ends, and how on earth are you going to make art in the big wide world? And that was, a whole adventure, a whole multi-decade adventure, but with great naivete and great passion, just leapt out into the world and said, I'm going to try to do this. And very quickly it becomes, can you turn this passion into something that's useful for somebody else?
So at this point in your career, you're out of college. I look around your studio. We're here in Alex's studio, and there's art everywhere, as you can imagine. And there's so many different styles of art in here. There's different mediums. There's different, just pure style. So at that point in your life, what did you see as your medium, or did you not have one at that time?
I really didn't. And for all of my career up to now, I don't find it useful to say, like, I have a style. the useful thing to me is I think of it all as exploration. The works of art that you see are the products of my efforts to learn. Everything I make is me exploring. What would it look like if I did this? How would it feel if I put these two images together? What if the figure was formulated in this way? What if it was formulated in that way? What if we did the same thing with a different set of colors? So all of these pictures, all these hundreds and even thousands of pictures that I've made over the years are first and foremost explorations that then become an object that can be sold or seen by others or whatever. And that's the way that remains art to me. The more it becomes like I need to make products to sell, it's fine, but it becomes less life-changing and more sort of product-oriented. And there's nothing wrong with being product-oriented, but the beating heart to me is treading new ground, learning and expressing things that come from the inner world,
So you consider yourself a muralist now. Obviously, that's probably the majority of the work that you do. Am I wrong?
Yep, no, that's right.
Okay, but you still do other things in the art world. You're still doing smaller pictures and paintings, and I know you've done some sculpture in the past, and I've seen you do some nature things and really beautiful stuff. When did you discover the mural as what you think is going to be, at that point, a future for you, or something that could, you title yourself a muralist. So when did you feel like, when did you do your first mural? Let's ask you that first.
So my first mural was in my last semester of college, 1997. It's funny to think of how many really seminal decisions were made for pretty kind of dumb reasons, or almost were a little bit made for me in a way. I was coming to the end of school. I had this passion for picture making and an absolute terror of money, the business side of things, and not only terror, but just total ignorance.
You sound like every other student that leaves college, but yes, I totally understand what you're saying.
I guess a big difference is, for an artist, there is no map. There's no ladder to climb. You're just yourself. And, you could maybe join a company and become a graphic designer, or I don't even know. But in my idealism, I never even thought of trying to get an artistic job at a company. That just was not on my radar. I was like, I'm an artist. I make paintings. Sink or swim. This is what I am.
So at what point did you start realizing that murals were going to be the future, potentially, of your main focus, not your total focus, but your main focus?
So it really was kind of a watershed moment. I had to create a body of work to graduate from school, and I was just feeling so concerned about, when I graduate, and what am I going to take my paintings to a gallery, and what, I just didn't know what to do. I was very not looking forward to endless rejection. I just had this inspiration that if I could paint one of my pictures on a public wall, I would be kind of skipping the middleman and going straight to an audience. I was very concerned about, I have these precious pictures, but how are they ever going to reach anybody? And so in a way, painting a mural on a wall seemed a bit like a silver bullet. It's like this solution to my existential problem of having these treasures and nowhere to put them. So in my final semester of college, I just went wandering around the city I lived in, Northampton, Massachusetts, looking for blank walls that could be seen from a road. And I took notes, and I made phone calls, and I found out, who owned this wall and who owned that wall. And I, to make a long story short, ended up getting a yes from a building owner. And I went out there with my paints, and I had shown him a sketch of what I was going to do. And here's the crucial thing. This just this was the make or break thing. I was there at the wall. I had my paints, and I was literally about to start painting, put the brush on the wall. And I was struck with a fear that was like a wall itself, I was so afraid to start. There's hundreds of cars going by. It's like on a main road. And this is the first time I've ever painted in public. I'm used to painting in a studio, at home. And I just felt this like enormous self-consciousness. What if I make a fool of myself? What if it comes out bad? What if people just hate it? You know, the full force of that exposure was bearing on me mentally at that point. And so I sort of just threw my brushes down and stepped back, kind of like stumbling. And honestly, I prayed. I reached out and I was like, I know that I'm supposed to do this. I know that this is right, but I can't do it. I literally can't do it. And very quickly, this was so cool. This phrase came into my mind. It said, "It's not about you." And I was like, oh. And what that meant to me in that moment was, it's about the people who are going to see it. And I quickly just like had this shift of like, oh, I'm not here to prove that I'm cool. I'm here to give the gift of beauty, to give the gift of an image. I mean, I have been so blessed by these images that come to me. I love them. And my purpose in being here is about sharing something of value with the people who live in this neighborhood. And it quickly switched, and I just like felt excited. I still felt pretty uncertain about how it's going to come out, but the fear was gone. It was like the way had opened, like very quickly. And I went ahead and painted the thing, and it was like the most wonderful experience ever. Like all the fear about like, you know, you imagine people are going to be mocking you and like denigrating the work. It couldn't have been more opposite. People were like hollering out their windows at me and clapping and cheering and like the whole thing. For someone who had only been working in a studio and maybe some friends here and there being like, oh, that's good, you know. It was magical to have a reaction, such a positive, an overwhelmingly positive reaction to this work from total strangers. And that's when I was like, oh, this is power, to be able to have an idea and put it in front of the eyes of thousands of people. I was like, this is power. And it's a power that utilizes what I have, which is pictures. I have pictures in my mind. And from then on, I was like sold.
That's excellent. So, I mean, obviously the size of the art, it's hard to avoid.
This thing, if it's 15 feet tall and 35 feet wide, it's now part of the neighborhood. It's an idea that is present in the neighborhood. It becomes part of the conversation of that neighborhood, largely because of the size. I mean, it obviously has to be a good idea, it has to be well rendered, but the scale is a big part of it.
Does that mural still exist?
It does. Yep. It's 26 years old.
Wow, fantastic. To give away the location, would you be willing to give away the location?
Of course.
Where is it?
It's right on Route 9. So if you drove out Route 9 and went straight into Northampton.
Heading which direction?
Heading west.
Okay.
So you cross over the Connecticut River from Hadley. You come into Northampton, you wind around a little bit, and then right as you're coming into downtown Northampton, it's right before there's like a train bridge that goes over the road. It's across the street from the post office. It's right on the main drag of Northampton on the right-hand side if you're traveling west.
What's the building that it's on?
It's a coffee shop called The Roost.
Perfect. And what's the subject matter?
It's an image that I have done again and again and again. It's a tree of life image. Pictures come to me. That's one of the glories of art, is receiving these images. And this picture was like that. It's a tree, and at the bottom, under the tree, is like a city skyline. So the implication is this tree is enormous.
Bigger than the city, bigger than people, bigger than life.
And to me, it signifies this, spiritual component of life. And it came to me as a very comforting image, that there's this big, enormous tree sort of towering over this, I drew my little house and, the little Northampton buildings. It's an image that I've made lots of times in sketchbooks, but also in public again and again over the last 30 years.
Are you still friendly with the owner of the building who gave you the yes?
No, I haven't spoken to him since then.
Did he need to approve the image beforehand? I would imagine he probably wanted to see something.
He did, and this is actually so cool. When I finished that one, I had a conversation with him, and he said, if you'd like to do something else, I have another wall for you, which was sort of around the corner, same neighborhood. And this time, basically, he said, like, it came out so good, don't worry about it. Like, do whatever you like.
Wow.
And I got to do something that I never get to do, which is I didn't make a plan for that second mural. Improvisation is a huge part of my process.
Yeah.
It's very natural to me to not make sketches, but just make it up on the spot. And you can imagine in public art, that doesn't happen very often. So it was pretty wonderful in this second mural I ever made to just be able to go out to this wall and wing it.
That's amazing.
And that one's still there too.
Excellent. Just to let the listeners know, we're going to probably have some photos of some of the sort of Alex's art on some of our social media sites. So keep a lookout for that. Hopefully you have a picture of the original mural somewhere. I'd love to get a picture of that up for folks so they can see what that's all about too. So take a look on social media. We'll post some of that stuff up there too. Okay, so you got your first mural done with success. You have found a new part of yourself and your art with that experience, and you've identified that is a powerful thing that you would like to continue to do. So what's the next steps? What do you do? Do you move back to Boston at that point, or are you still hanging out in Western Mass?
So when I graduated from UMass, I moved to Athens, Georgia. I just had it in my mind that when you graduate, you move far away. I just had that like sort of unquestionably in my mind. So I had a friend down there, and I lived in Georgia for 5 years. And in terms of creating my art life, I really just thought, there's walls, I'm gonna find something to paint on. But there's a big difference between that first thing where you ask, can I paint on your wall, to paying your rent with money made from that same activity. And so there was just a lot of trying to find ways. I just wanted to build up a portfolio, and I thought nobody's gonna hire me without with these 2 or 3 murals to show. So I thought I'm just gonna go and find walls and paint some kick-ass murals if I can get anybody to say yes. So for the first few years, I really was just doing that, looking at walls, calling up business owners. And the thing is, when you are doing something that you really, really believe in, the rejection sucks, but it's not the end. I think if I was trying to do like galleries, I would have withered. That wasn't where my passion was. But I did have this thing of like working in public has this different feeling, and that you're going to have an audience. That you're going to reach people. I had this sense that with galleries, who even goes in there? So when rejections came, and they did, of course, it was just like, okay, swallow it and keep on going.
And that's a huge thing. I mean, it's easy to give up.
Yeah.
And I imagine art school doesn't teach you the business side of having to make a living.
It didn't back then. Maybe it does now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've wised up. But so basically the next several years were about trying to, with integrity and practicality, balance my desire to make the pictures that I purely wanted to make with jobs that people were willing to pay for. And it was a combination of doing things for free and then beautifully getting hired to do things that, like I remember my first job when I moved back to Boston was at this laundromat. There was a new laundromat opening, and they wanted to make a mural on their back of their building. I'm obviously, like, in my heart of hearts, not going to be making paintings about laundromats. But the crucial thing, the thing that makes it worth doing, is taking their subject matter, which is like not that interesting to me, and filling it with everything I have that is interesting to me. Even if it's just like making the light look real, or having there be little poetic moments like this mural. It was a kind of a Roslindale city scene, and there's some laundry hanging from a tree on a line. And there were just lots of opportunities to paint it well, to do it in a way that was satisfying to me. And, that was the trick for those first bunch of years, is taking jobs, which, thank God, came, and filling them with as much of my soul as possible, so that when I get finished, I feel like I have done something that is relevant to my pure artistic heart, even though I'm not filling my sketchbooks with pictures of laundromats.
How good are you at painting lint now?
Excellent.
Yeah.
A lot of practice.
Lint traps, lint.
Lotsofmaps.com. Vintage, local, national, and world maps for an affordable price. 99% of our maps are $25 or less. Great as gifts. Frame them or put them under glass for your home, vacation home, or as a memory of a special place. Lotsofmaps.com.
So you were living back here in Boston at the time, so you moved back from Athens, and obviously got your laundromat gig here in the Boston area. What was the next step? What did you find was inspirational towards getting you towards where you're at this point?
Right. Well, one thing that has been just consistent is my art life. And I mean that as distinct from my career or my business life. I mean my pure art life, just me with my pictures, was going strong. I'm filling sketchbooks. I'm making paintings that I love. This is worth living for. That is consistent from 1993 until now. And I mean that as totally separate from any money-making thing. It's a living, life-affirming relationship that I am having with ideas. It's just constant. It's like the biggest relief in the world. People talk about writer's block or whatever. I have never had it. I just love making pictures. Just love imagining stuff. I love having an idea and trying to make it real. It's been like this thing to lean on for my whole life. And it's because it's not about I'm trying to prove that I'm the dude. I'm just living in this magical world where I can make anything happen.
And I imagine not having somebody looking over your shoulder saying, you got to make these faster.
Totally.
You got to make them of this subject matter.
Totally.
Got to pump them out. I'm sure that's probably a big part of it.
Totally on my terms. I get to make pictures about things that I care about. Don't have to do anything that I don't care about. It's the best. So that's in my corner for this whole time. I'm absolutely confident that art itself is beautiful, that my art is beautiful, that I have stuff to share, that I have stuff that this influx of ideas, which is saving my life daily, just giving me riches. I never wonder if I have these riches. I never wonder. So as I head out into my career, I really was never unconfident about the content. I was unconfident about a ton of other things, but I knew the whole time, and still know, that the meat is there, the muscle is there, which, thank God, because if that wasn't true, I don't know how I ever could have done all the other things that have to be done, like the really scary process of negotiating contracts as a kid who never learned how to do any of that in meetings with people who are professionals. Just so much lack of confidence about that sort of thing. And, raising my prices over the years, knowing how to do that, just so much uncertainty about that stuff. But, it's like this constant, on one side is all the reasons why this should fail. And on the other side is this just absolute certainty that this can never fail because beauty is a capital B and it just exists. And I'm put here on planet Earth to make it happen.
But it's a good checks and balances. I mean, you could get a big ego, I think, if everything was going your way and you were too good at what you were doing and you didn't have reservations, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny to think of that way. I think the feeling of so much fear about all this other stuff, I never was really in danger of getting a big ego about that, because I was daily just like, this is like awful. This is so scary. And it was more like the stuff that I was totally confident about was like saving me from this like devouring dragon of everything else.
Did you ever, or even now, have you ever thought about having someone do the dirty work for you and you can just worry about the art?
Yeah, I mean, that question becomes a little more relevant as I started like making a little bit of money. At the beginning, I was just like, I can't hire anybody. I don't have 2 cents.
Right.
And also, I think my inner setting is like, I kind of want to figure it out. Like, I want to do it.
That was the point I was kind of getting at, is the fact that you did figure it out. A lot of folks don't, and they can't.
Yeah.
And you've found a way to, do you feel more comfortable in that now, in the business side of things?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. You know, it's been these many years of learning. And actually, one thing I wanted to bring out is a whole like side of my career has been this community involvement piece with the murals, you know, getting school kids or a church congregation or just like folks from a neighborhood to help with a mural painting. At the beginning, I had no sense of that. I was like, I'm a guy who makes pictures. That's the whole thing. And then as the jobs started to come, more and more of them were teaching jobs, or, you know, can you design a mural for our student body to paint? Actually, the very beginning of this was in 2003, maybe. I had this idea that I needed to start a mural painting program for teenagers. I was teaching some in high schools at that point. And really just as much to like give myself something to do as anything else. I am with these kids who need something to do for the summer. I'm going to see if I can do this. And you know, I thought of it because, you know, we're talking about figuring things out. That was like taking a big heaping helping of things I didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
I created this program and directed it and taught it and, you know, did every aspect of it for a handful of years. And from that, you know, I learned about fundraising, community development, talking with community players, all kinds of education stuff, payroll, taxes, all these things, which any one of them would have like made me want to quit a few years before that. But here I am doing like 10 of those things all at once. And once you're involved in it, and I have all these people who have donated to it, I'm responsible to them. I mean, I'm in this crucible of experience, and I feel really grateful that I just was really motivated to figure all that stuff out, because if, you know, after doing that for a few years, now I'm no longer just a guy who makes pictures. I'm a guy who can do all these things to the level that I can do them. But that just gave me this whole foundation for getting further out into the community, making more connections, being more facile with the business side of things.
Great word, by the way.
Facile?
Facile.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, so that was another sort of turning point where I ceased to just be like a picture maker, and it became so much more ensconced in the community and making art as a service for healing and connection and all these really important things in a neighborhood or a business or a school.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense. That you've grown by experiencing some of the things that you fear.
Definitely.
You've grown and become not only better at those things that you feared, but you're also finding different avenues to ply your trade, correct?
Definitely. I mean, that's been one of the glories of my experience, I think, you know, early on I was like, okay, this is very scary, but it's clear that I have to just face it. Once you face down a fear and see that it's not going to hold you back, you go, oh, there's something there. Because, you know, fears are coming. They continue to come. But if it ceases to be something to avoid, and you learn maybe piece by piece that it's a thing that you can face down or at least push back against, then you have a very different relationship with the inner resistance that we all encounter. It's been a model to me to, when something is scary, okay, well, this is scary and I don't like it, but I have seen this be like turned into gold. So like, I would like to see that happen again and again and again.
You are loved. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to the You Are Loved guy. You've probably seen that certainly around Boston, around different parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That has become your trademark, it's certainly not the only thing you do, but it's certainly something that has really resonated with you and the folks that you're making these murals for. But You Are Loved is a phrase that you're putting into a lot of these murals.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the phrase come from?
Long before I ever painted a You Are Loved mural, going way back, I always wanted my art to be comforting. I always had this imagination of, someone coming home from a rotten day at work or getting broken up with or whatever, seeing one of my murals and just getting a little like, there's something good in the world. So I had that in my mind for, years and years. And it was informing my work all along. I think beauty, without any words at all, beauty is this comforting agent. So in 2013, I was actually doing a mural at a school in New Orleans. And I was talking with the principal, and she said, we have this school-wide initiative that we're doing where we're trying to think of ways to make our students feel more safe. The implication being that there's ways in which they're not feeling safe, whether it be at school or at home or whatever. So we're trying to foster a feeling of safety among children. And I came out of that meeting and I just thought, wow, that's a really serious task for anyone, let alone a work of art. How do you make a work of art that's going to help a child feel more safe? So I started working on this mural. I was already working on it, which at that point it was kind of an abstract color mural. My idea was that it was going to be kind of like a color hug for these kids. But as I was working, I was just thinking and trying to be really serious about how do you help a child feel safe with pictures. And I was imagining this picture and that picture, and again, I'm a praying person, and I was reaching out and I was just like asking, how do you do this? And the question that came back to me was, why are you trying to beat around the bush? What I had been thinking, what if I make a picture of this? What if I make a picture of that? And I thought, well, what would be direct? And instantly I was like, well, love is what makes people feel safe. If you know that they're loved. Just thought, can we write this on a wall? And I went back to the principal and I said, can we write this on your wall? It felt kind of personal.
Sure.
It felt like something that it felt weird to put it in public. And she said yes. She said we could do it. So in the context of that larger mural, I wrote, You Are Loved, in like 4-inch tall letters. That was the first one. And it felt crazy to write something so intimate in a permanent paint on a public place. But it felt like I was kind of breaking through this wall.
Have you used text in any mural previous to that?
I had one of my favorite murals I ever made in 2009. It's here in Roxbury. It's a huge forest. It's like 20 feet tall and 75 feet wide, really big, realistically rendered forest. And at the left end, it says love, and at the right end, it says amor. So I had always had this relationship between images and text.
Mm-hmm.
But this was the first time I ever had thought of doing just the text. Anyway, after doing those 4-inch tall letters at the school, I went on to my next project, and I was back at home, and I thought, gosh, what if we could just do that? And the words themselves are 12 feet tall and 50 feet long, and it's just owning this intersection. I actually imagined this intersection right in downtown JP, where I live. My initial imaginations were of this mega You Are Loved mural right in downtown JP. And I just thought, wow, it would be so confrontational. It's like simultaneously so intimate and so confrontational. It's like making an assertion about you
That's right. How do you know that I'm loved?
Yeah, exactly. It's been so interesting over the years to see the reactions that people have. How do you know is one that I sometimes get.
I'm a rat bastard. Why would anyone love me?
Especially, nowadays, I've done these in all kinds of different scenarios, including prisons and homeless shelters and places where people are not happy necessarily. And I definitely have had that reaction, like, who the hell are you? Like, you don't know me. But the thing is, it's not about personalities. And I feel sure about it. It's not something I feel uncertain about. I do feel it's more like if we can redirect our thoughts to something really pure, really good, that is fundamentally true, we're just going to experience it more. But you definitely do end up having some debates with people, which I'm not really interested in debating. I'm interested in hearing their perspective, but it's not really up for debate.
When hearing people's interpretations of those words, you must get different adaptations of what it is they're reading, because there's a spiritual feeling there. Sometimes it's a direct, yes, I have someone that actually loves me. Mm-hmm. There must be different ways to take those words. And I imagine you've heard people's ideas about what it means to them. Mm-hmm. What does it mean to you?
That's such a good question. The reason why I feel certain about it and why it's not about you are loved if is because for me it is a spiritual thing. It's like a fact, like gravity. And that's the only reason why I feel confident enough to do it in public places. If it was like something that I felt was my opinion, it would be sort of way too scary. In fact, this is a really cool story. In 2015, about a year and a half after I started the project, I agreed to do a You Are Loved mural at the Bridgewater State Hospital, which is, it's a hospital, but it's a mental hospital. It's like for people who have committed crimes. So it's like a prison, but worse. And so I'm doing this You Are Loved thing there. And I got there and I had my paints and I walk into the hallway and I've learned where I'm going to do the project. And I just started to map it out. And very similar to that first mural that I had, I just had this fear. And I realized that there are all these guards. And they're these big, burly dudes. And without purely for a stereotype, I had this idea in my mind that they were just going to be they were going to think this was so stupid. They're here every day, putting people in restraints, dealing with the daily gnarly things that happen in this facility. And I'm a long-haired, like, hippie artist coming in off the street and painting this thing. And I just was imagining this guard who was like right over here behind me. He was going to be watching me, and as he saw the text coming out, he was just going to be rolling his eyes at me. And I was just like embarrassed for myself. So I did the same thing that I did at that first. I put my brushes down, and I just prayed again. And it was very much the same thing. I was like, I know I'm supposed to be doing this. I feel that, this force of love is what has brought me. I know this is right. And I got another question in my mind, like the response to my reaching out. The question was, is it true? And I was like, it is. It is true. And I was like, I don't care what this guard thinks. He can't argue with gravity. Like, he can't argue with this either. It's not about what I think. I'm just an artist who, like, has this message, but it's not because I made up the message. It's just something that would, like, be helpful for people to remember more. And it was amazing how I was like, I just don't care what this guy thinks. And then, of course, I became pals with the guy. He loved it. It was just fear.
He probably needs to know he's loved too.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that I became aware of, doing more and more of these. You think at school, okay, well, it's for the kids. But it's not just for the kids. It's for the teachers. It's for the administrators. It's for the parents. Same thing at a prison. You think of, this is for the inmates. But it's for everybody. It's always for everybody. And that's a really cool thing to remember. Anyway, that really changed things, that experience at the prison, because it took it that much further out of my hands. I was that much less capable of being self-conscious about it, which was great, because after that I was doing more prisons and things with teenagers, and anything could be scary with who knows what's going to happen with teenagers. So yeah, that was a beautiful step forward, to just feel like this is the same as gravity. It's not something that I'm in control of. I'm just sort of bearing witness to it.
Excellent. I love that.
Lotsofmaps.com. Vintage, local, national, and world maps for an affordable price. 99% of our maps are $25 or less. Great as gifts. Frame them or put them under glass for your home, vacation home, or as a memory of a special place. Lotsofmaps.com.
So You Are Loved you've brought that all over the world. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I know you've done a lot of traveling in your day. Are you traveling to do murals, or are you doing murals while you travel?
I'm mostly traveling to do murals. It was really another watershed moment when the You Are Loved project began in January 2014. Without knowing it, it became the most successful sort of thing that I've ever put out into the world. Prior to that, I had definitely had successes and had painted murals all over the place, but my business life was still kind of like the hustle.
Yeah.
But as the You Are Loved project came into its own over, 3, 5, 7 years, it just became really popular. And the amount of travel that I did went up a lot, and I was able to even raise my prices. So my life changed a lot. My personal life changed a lot, because that idea as a business idea was just much more successful than anything I had before. I live in the world differently now. It's one thing to, be a 30-year-old artist who it's working, and I'm getting a project now and then, and I'm making some money, and I'm happy because I'm paying my rent making art. Like that was years ago. And now it's very different to have people emailing me saying, can you come to Texas? Can you come to Oregon? We just got back from Australia and New Zealand doing my first murals down there. That feels very different. And it's a kind of like, when I think of my little 26-year-old self and his hopes, I just feel very, very grateful to have navigated this path to be where I am now. I feel the same joy to put that message in front of people now as I did 9 years ago when it started. But I get to continue exploring how to, we've now made 110 You Are Loved murals, I think, since 2014. And I promised myself, no, they would never be the same as one another. So, it's 110 different iterations, because to me, it's all about learning. Like I get bored if I repeat stuff. So it's just been this exploration. And the thing that's exciting to me is, nearly 10 years into this project, it's not like I've mastered it. And I've certainly mastered plenty aspects of it, but there's been so much learning in that process that there's now all these new directions that I'm excited. I want to try this out, and I want to try this out, and I want to try this out, which, again, thank God, because I don't like the idea of, okay, well, I figured it out. The money's good, and let's stop making art.
Right.
That's not what I want at all.
You don't want to just keep pumping out the same thing over and over again. That takes the challenge out of it.
And it's not even
out of it.
it's not even life.
Right.
Like I'm delighted that I'm financially in a different situation than I was 25 years ago. But honestly, to the degree that makes me stop making art or stop exploring, I consider it a loss. Like, I don't want to have to be motivated by need. I want to be motivated by like joy and excitement to explore. And I really want that to continue forever.
I got a strange question. Have you ever turned anybody down because the request was taking away from artistic ability?
It's a good question, and that takes me way back, because I do remember, early on, maybe 2002, and this was back in the day when like any paying mural was like a reason to do cartwheels. I had come across this. It was like a kid's gym or something, and it was going to be like cartoon characters on the wall. And again, like, I don't disparage anybody for doing any job, but I was like getting an email from that person, and I just thought to myself, if I take this job, what am I going to be doing next year? What am I going to be doing the year after that? And I did turn down that job, which felt insane because I wanted the money. But it was the right choice because I didn't want to be painting Mickey Mouse.
Did you make an attempt to try to talk them into allowing you to do your own thing?
No, but there's plenty of stories like that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, again, I just love thinking of this one. I got a really well-paying job at a private school in suburban Boston. It was like much better paying than any other job I had had to that point. And they wanted to do a mural about American history. I think this was probably like 2006. And they had a list of, 25 things that they wanted to be included in this mural, which first off, I was like, you can't have 25 things. That's like, there's way too many things to be included in this space. But one of them was the Twin Towers. I think they maybe even wanted like a visual image of like the smoking towers. I mean, it was a different time, 2006 is different than 2023. But I remember getting a pit in my stomach when they said that they wanted that, because I didn't want to make that image. That may just be my personal thing. Like I didn't want to remember it in that way. And I didn't like the idea of like causing children to remember it in that way. I just didn't want to do it. But they were all into it, the administrators of this school. And so I went home from that meeting knowing what they wanted and seeing like all this money that I was going to make. And I just like was weighing, how can this work? How can this work? And so I went back to them in our next meeting and I said, with a lump in my throat and like knowing that I maybe was like going to not get this job. I said, like, I think you'll regret including this image in the mural. And here's why. And I told them why. And they said, you're right. And I like breathed this enormous sigh of relief and was able to proceed and put in, things about Ben Franklin and MLK and, the other things that were on their list.
You're not saying Ben Franklin had something to do with 9/11, right?
It was an inside job. No, I am not saying that.
Okay, just checking.
But, I think I was, again, maybe 30 when that happened. And like not really expecting people who are 20 years older than me to like listen to me. Kind of expecting for them to be like, well, yeah, I see what you want to do, but like do what we say. That was definitely my expectation.
Yeah.
And the fact that they listened to me and like heard my explanation was staggering and felt like as good as making the money. Just like, oh my gosh, they respect me. They respect my opinion. And then it makes me, next time I have a meeting like that, I'm like, oh, well, I'm a professional. I'm a guy who...
You're going to do what I say.
Yeah. Now I order them around. No, but it really sets the stage. And I am much more confident about leading those kinds of conversations now because I have a sense of what I want to do. I have a sense of what works. And I never want to like railroad somebody into doing not doing what's going to be in their interests. But I have a big interest in doing it in a way that's going to allow me to use all of my artistic skills to their highest ability and not have to waste time, doing images that kind of weaken it.
So it's kind of a partnership in a sense where
Definitely.
You're the artist, you're the expert with the art. They have an idea of what the mural is going to do for their community and all of that. So, there's got to be a little give and take there, right?
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's definitely a conversation and a collaboration. My first question is, what do you want this mural to do? What qualities do you want it to express? I'm really much more interested in qualities than images, in that first phase. I don't want them to tell me, okay, we want a picture of this. I want them to tell me what they want it to feel like so that I can use my artistic ability, my imagination, my ability of creating images to show them something that's going to do what they want it to do. They are experts at knowing what they want. they're not experts at knowing what pictures are going to do that.
You've talked about getting emails from folks around the world, around certainly the different parts of the country. How are they finding you? How is Alex Cook getting the word out?
It's a few different ways. It's certainly social media. It's word of mouth. I put my website and Instagram on every mural I make. It's also, if I work with a church, that church is connected with all kinds of other churches. If I work with a school, that school is connected to a network of schools.
So are you asking for their help in spreading the word? Or
Not really.
Okay.
They all have their own social media. Anytime somebody makes a mural, they're excited about it. It's something I do all the time, but it's, for everybody I work with, it's probably something they're only going to do once. So it's like a really big deal for every organization that I work with. So they're sharing it on social media. They're excited about it. They're sharing it in all these different ways.
That's great. I got to ask, touch-ups. Do you ever go back and have to redo or?
Out of the 200 and whatever murals I've made in 26 years, I think I've touched up maybe 3.
Okay. All right.
It's not something I care to do. I will do it on my terms if it's a mural that I love and if it's close by. The funniest one is one of my first murals in Boston. I did make this in 2002 out in Roslindale. It was a big tree on the side of the Fornax Bakery, if you ever have been over there. And I just loved this mural. Like I felt so psyched about this mural when I had finished it. And a few years after it was made, a car crashed into the wall.
Oh, boy.
They called me up, and I was like, oh, man, I mean, this particular mural, like, I had total creative freedom. Like, it just looked exactly how I wanted it to look, And I live a few miles from here, so I was like, I'm gonna fix this up. Like, I don't want that to just, like, have, a Ford Escort's, mark.
So you didn't put a Ford Escort in the painting?
Nope.
You didn't paint that? Okay.
No, it was crazy to see, though, the like huge scratch across the wall that I had so lovingly painted, and it was very satisfying to, make it as if it had never happened.
That's great. Materials you use. Now, you must work on, I imagine, cement walls, metal, I imagine wood.
Mm-hmm.
Are you using the same paints for all 3? Or maybe there's more mediums than that, but or are you specific about the material you're painting on?
I use latex exterior house paint.
Easy enough.
So
okay.
It's very rare to paint on metal. That might be the
Okay.
one where it's like there might be a better product, but 98% of the time I'm working on brick or cinder block or concrete, sometimes wood, and that kind of paint will work on all of those surfaces.
What do you think the longevity of some of these murals are going to be with that paint?
It really depends on a few factors. First of all, if it's inside, it's going to last forever.
Sure.
And if it's outside, it depends upon the integrity of the wall. If there's water coming from the inside, your mural isn't going to last very long.
I imagine sun being on
Sun
it
is a
lot.
big deal. So
Yeah.
and that, that even varies with where in the country it is. Or,
Yep.
Around here we have to deal with snow and ice and water. Whereas, I have a bunch of stuff in Southern California, and if it's a west facing wall, you get that sun just beating down, and it can fade relatively quickly. But, a mural that has all of those things kind of working well together. Like you said, this first mural I ever painted, it's 26 years old. It's a little faded, but it looks pretty darn good.
That's great.
So that's actually, I'm sort of learning year by year. I sort of look back on that mural and see if it's still looking good. That's been 26 years.
I was going to say, did you know what were the best paints at that time?
No.
So you really just kind of crossed your fingers and
Yeah.
And were you just buying the cheapest paints you could find? Even
I
know
really
you weren't getting paid
was.
for that. Yeah.
I really was. These days, I've been using Behr paint forever from Home Depot because I can go anywhere in the country and it's going to be it's the same store. I don't have to wonder if I can get the things that I want. Actually, this was really sweet. Before the pandemic, for a few years before the pandemic, I struck a deal with Behr Paint, and they were donating paint to all the You Are Love projects.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that was really cool of them.
And to the folks at Home Depot, if you feel like advertising on our show, you just give me a call and we can make that happen. Things have come together. Looking at your entire story, it just seems like your growth mentally, strategically, artistically, business-wise, it seems like everything has grown. I'm sure you've had some downtimes, and I'm sure you've taken some wrong turns, but it seems like it's all come together to allow you to be an artist as a living, which is not an easy thing to do. I'm not sure many people are able to pull that off. That's a wonderful thing. And you did it on your own, which has got to be incredibly satisfying.
It is super satisfying. And, you said I did it on my own. And in a sense, I did. And then I think I think I've done 8 crowdfunding campaigns over the years with hundreds and hundreds of people, giving $25 or $50 or $1,000. Or the way that my career has unfolded has really, in a lot of ways, been about community. So in that sense, I haven't done it alone at all. Obviously, I've done plenty of things alone, but so much of it has been about creating relationships and making things that make people happy to give something towards it, where I know that it's part of my work and it's part of my business plan to conceive of my work as something that in a little way does for people what they wish they could do. People participating in a mural, most of them, if not all of them, they're not artists, but they got to put paint on a wall and create something that when they leave, I do my job and make it look really good so that when they come by, they say, I participated in that thing. And it's not just there, it kicks butt. It's really strong. I learned long ago that there's a big difference between people come to participate in the mural and it looks okay. That gives you one feeling. I had a fun time that day. I painted with my friends and it looks okay. Versus we had a fun time that day and it is beautiful.
Yeah.
I remember being in 4th grade and kids watching me while I was drawing and be like, oh, you're good, That feeling of the power of doing something that is impressive and expresses value in a way. That when somebody gets to participate in that, it's a gift for them to be able to do something that they can't do on their own.
Yeah, I'm really good at stick figures. That's about as far as I go. So obviously I'm always blown away by your art, period. But most people's art, period. But yours in particular. What's the weirdest request you've had for a mural? I mean, somebody must have come to you and said, hey, listen, we want to...
Yeah, I've got a great answer. So I did the laundromat mural in Rosendale in 2002. The next door business was an appliance store. And it was owned by a brother and sister. So they wanted a mural for the interior of their store. And the funny thing is, the sister was really into like old-timey design. She had all these posters of, the first refrigerator and like advertising from the teens and 20s and 30s. Cool images to look at. And the brother was really into meteorology. And
which goes with appliances.
They said, we want you to do a timeline of the development of appliances and great events in New England meteorology. So I made this mural. It's a timeline around.
So you did it?
I did it. It was great. I was laughing the whole time. I was like, this is so surreal. And it exists. You can go there today.
Still there.
Yeah. It's like, the first refrigerator was created in 1919 and cost, $30 or whatever. And then the next one is like the Great Worcester Tornado of 1938. And then the next one is, it's just like these really unrelated.
Or are they related?
Well, you find out that they are the more you follow the... I just thought that was so funny.
I'm surprised to hear that you did it, and I think that's great. I expected you to say, oh, this is one that I would never do.
No.
But, that's great.
No, I was so charmed. They were so funny. They were really nice people. And I was just like, usually people are so conservative with their aesthetic ideas. And I'm always pushing to make people, to try to think a little bit bigger. And their idea was just so weird that I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. This is great.
Let me transition quickly, and we can just touch on this. Who are your artistic heroes? Who are you inspired by? I'm sure they've changed over the years, but
began with like album cover art. There's this guy. He did like Jimi Hendrix and Grateful Dead album covers. Rick Griffin was a big hero to me when I was a teenager, and then as I got more into fine art, I guess I love Picasso, love Paul Klee, I love Henri Matisse, and honestly, this is actually, it's just so interesting how life develops. For most of my career, honestly, I wasn't really looking at other artists, which is not to say that I wasn't influenced. I certainly was influenced. But I was just interested in making my pictures. I wasn't looking to this artist to influence me in this way. And, what if I took from this person? I just wasn't doing that. But in the last few years, it just has like welled up in me a hunger to learn about what's out there and who's out there. And I've been creating a library of art books and just like learning about artists. For example, a couple of years ago, I learned about a Canadian nature painter called Robert Bateman, who just paints in this unbelievably realistic way. I've always been pretty good at rendering things realistically, but I was looking at his painting and I was like, I am a hack. Like he's just so good that I thought, okay, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to like up my realism game. And you can see this painting right there. That was one of the ones. I just pointed to a landscape painting here in the studio.
Stunning, by the way.
That I thought to myself, I want to like see if I can turn up my ability to render things realistically by as many degrees as possible. And when I made that painting and another one in that same period, I did do better than I ever had done before, but I also felt my limitations. I felt it pushing again. I would need to really work at this to expand in that direction. So that's an example of just recently, this one guy who I never heard of. I came across a book of him in a store down in the Cape, and I bought the book and just was immediately influenced by him and wanted to take the ideas that I got from him and immediately put it in my work. So nowadays I'm very hungry for new artists to see what they're doing. I do the same thing on Instagram, actually. My Instagram feed is mostly artists. There's just, you can learn quickly from Instagram that there are so many talented people out there who are just making it or not making it in the way that they are. It's funny to me, you come across somebody whose work is okay and they have, thousands of followers, and somebody whose work is amazing and they have 900 followers.
Right.
Or certainly any combination of those things. But I keep track of different artists that I love. Yeah, that's another way that I'm learning about what people are doing, and certainly that influences me as well.
What would you suggest to an artist that wants to make it their living to be an artist? An artist that's, let's say, coming out of high school, coming out of college. What would you suggest that would be a good route for them to achieve down the line, hopefully, independence of being able to be an artist for a living?
I think one of the main things is being really honest about what you want and who you are. Being an artist can mean lots of things. You could be drawing cartoons for Disney. You could be a graphic designer. You could be a web designer. You could be painting murals. You could be a fine art painter selling paintings in galleries. One of those fits with one person and doesn't fit with another person. I wouldn't have been satisfied making cartoons at Disney. I don't think I would have been good enough at that skill. And there are plenty of people who it's more mainstream. It's more easy to understand being a graphic designer for a company than it is saying, I have an idea. I'm starting with an idea. I'm going to make this wacky object and hope somebody can buy it. It means a lot of different things to quote, be an artist. And I'm completely ignorant about a lot of those definitions. I only have my career, so I only can really speak to if you wanted to do something like what I did or am doing, the first thing is you have to be really into it.
Sure.
You have to really, really love it a lot. And I think, honestly, sometimes being an artist is kind of like a sexy career. In that, I was saying to you beforehand, like people sort of ooh and ah when you tell them. And I think that there are people, maybe younger people, who say like, I want to be an artist, but it's for that reason and not because they really want to. And it is easy to get a shipwreck, to like find yourself shipwrecked if you're doing something really hard for the wrong reason. So that's something to watch out for. But if you do feel like I have ideas that I am excited about, then I say, make those ideas really good. Work your skills, get good. Honestly, a lot of it is about virtues. Be humble. You're going to get your ass kicked. But it's okay. Be humble, serve your ideas. That's a big one. Like, I feel like a servant of my ideas. That's the only way the indignities are palatable, because I love the ideas. I want these ideas to be witnessed in the world. I want them to become real. There's all kinds of embarrassing, scary indignities, that have happened over the years. Times I've been stiffed for money, just all kinds of things. Certainly more longer ago, but like just endless rejection.
But the art doesn't let you down, does it?
No.
So it's mostly the business side of things that could possibly let you down.
Yeah.
And that's got to be the challenging part, right? Is the business side of being an artist.
Well, and that was true for me. Like I said, I never had any writer's block, but that's not true for everybody. The art side can be challenging. And honestly, it's challenging for me, but it's challenging in the way that like playing sports is challenging. Like, I love to play basketball. It's physically demanding, but there's kind of nothing I'd rather be doing. It's so fun, but it's challenging. So like for me, art making isn't easy exactly, but there's nothing I'd rather be doing. So be humble, serve the ideas, be practical. Another place artists have shipwrecks is if you just have to have your way. If you're saying, I'm only going to make my ideas and I'm going to sell them for
Don't be stubborn.
$1,000 the first time I ever make it. Yeah, I think I have a mural career because I was willing to take jobs that weren't the perfect job. I did plenty of teaching. I did plenty of murals that were like not really exactly what I wanted to do, but like I said, there were ways that I could infuse them with things that were exciting to me, and over time worked more towards things that I was just doing what I wanted. That's another sense of humility. And I think there's patience. It can be very tempting to think, I didn't make it in 2 years. And again, I think if you're counting the years, you might not be doing the right thing. It's only the love of doing it and the excitement to learn that is ever going to enable anybody to be able to do something where you engage with so much opposition. There's no reason good enough to face all that garbage except actual inspiration, or like actually like this is going to serve people. Serving people does a lot for helping people have the motivation. You see that all over the place, all kinds of different disciplines. The idea of like, this is really going to help people. And I think there's also this thing of practicality. Like, you really have to let the rubber hit the road and say, I got to charge this much. I got to be brave enough to charge this much, but not stupid enough to charge this much. It's a heartbreaking moment when you realize that you asked too much and you didn't get the job.
Yeah.
But it's also an embarrassing and heartbreaking moment to realize you did get the job and you undersold yourself by, $1,500.
Absolutely. And then you go to regret that.
Totally.
job.
So it's
Yeah.
it continues to be a balance. I mean, any business person knows that. You don't want to undersell yourself, but you want to get the job.
Do you feel like luck played any role in it, or do you feel like it was all motivated and...
Well, countless wonderful things happened along the way. Meeting the right person, being at the right event to get the connection. There's too many to even think of. I don't believe in luck exactly, but I do believe that wonderful things that you never dreamed of happen when you kind of jump off the cliff. Years ago, I did a bunch of bike touring where, I had my backpack and was cycling. Like I rode from Boston to Savannah, Georgia, knowing, again, almost nothing. I was 20 years old, I was by myself. And the amount of times that it was raining and I was lost and I met somebody who said, "Hey, why don't you come sleep on our couch? How about a free hot meal? How about a shower?" It was almost like clockwork how much that happened. And I began to recognize that was like a literal, almost jumping off a cliff. Like I'm not at home. All I have is my backpack and my wits and my bank card. And people can see this idealism. I think people want to support idealism. That's something that people are hungry for. People are hungry for a way to express their own idealism when they see someone else doing something that they relate to and think is beautiful. And I have relied upon that as an artist, all these crowdfunding campaigns and all kinds of different ways that I have been supported, sometimes by asking and plenty of times by someone coming to me and saying, "I love your work. How can I support you?" And I think that comes from idealism, and idealism involves leaving some security behind.
Sure. I know you've grabbed hold of social media. If social media were around when you were fresh out of college, do you think you would have excelled at this even a faster rate? Or do you feel like it just would have been a different mode and you would have found your way maybe in the same amount of time? It's
really hard to imagine. I mean, it's such a world changer.
Yeah.
I think of those first 10 years. I have always been ridiculously slow on the uptake of sort of technology and those sorts of things. I think I got my first cell phone in maybe 2008. So my art life when I graduated from school in 97 until maybe I joined Facebook in 2008, that was a solid decade of living in a different century.
Right.
Where I literally was taking a book of photographs to a restaurant. Can I interest you in a mural? In a way that's unthinkable these days.
Right.
If social media existed then, I probably would have resisted it.
Yeah, sure.
I had a lot of resistance to different things back then. And so much of the stuff you have to learn, it's not even about technology or what's available in terms of tools. It's just who are you as a human, and are you willing to accept those tools? Are you willing to learn how to use them? Are you willing to accept help? Are you willing to take in this new idea that requires you to shift and change?
So where does it go from here, Alex? Now, I know you've got a whole bunch of different projects. You don't sit by your laurels and say, "I'm just going to do murals. I'm not going to do anything else." You're constantly reaching out and trying new things, trying different mediums. Mm-hmm. Social media, like you said, is something that it's not new to you, but it's certainly something you embraced, and you feel like you normally wouldn't embrace something along that line, but you did, and I think you're happier for it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next, and then where's the future for you, for art?
Well, one of the most exciting things about the development of my art life has been that things have really changed from season to season and year to year, and gone in different directions in terms of media. There was a whole section of my life where I was making music for my living. We didn't talk about that too much, but that was a development of my creative life that wasn't made as a shrewd business decision. It was just it was time to do that. And now, after doing You Are Loved for 10 years, I begin to wonder, 5 years from now, am I going to be doing You Are Loved? During the pandemic, I started doing a lot more studio painting. So I have lots of paintings around, and I'm more in that mode. So I've been thinking about, showing more in a gallery, trying to show different kinds of ideas than you really could show in a mural scenario. A couple of years ago, I wrote, or beginning about 5 years ago, I wrote this book and then released it a couple of years ago. It's basically a creative memoir, creative and spiritual memoir, going really deeply into sort of all the things that we've been talking about today. And then my current project that I'm doing outside of murals is I'm creating a new book that's basically going to be a picture book. I have been keeping sketchbooks for 30 years, so I have about 1,200 paintings in these sketchbooks that I've chosen about 300 of. So it's basically going to be an adult picture book chronicling, from 1993 to 2023, this pictorial development of my creative life. So I'm like very excited for that book. It's going to be called The Story That Told Itself, because, it's a story that I certainly never intended to tell over 30 years. Even though I made each picture, I had no sense of the story that comes out through these images that were each made at a pinpoint in time, but when seen together, just do something that no individual painting does.
Isn't that life?
Yeah, exactly. And I have always felt like intensely aware of that. I live in this world of pictures. If I make a mural in LA, some people in LA see that one. Or if I make a mural in Albany, New York, some people see that one. And that's why kind of having a website is cool. People can go to my website and see, there's these 50 murals together. But my pictorial world is thousands of pictures. And every once in a while, I'm like, it's like I'm the only person who sees them all together. And it's this mega work of art. So this new book that I'm making is like trying to show a little piece of that, how deep it actually goes when you can see hundreds of pictures together, and the edifice that builds to see all those ideas all together.
Alex Cook, muralist, and more. Thank you so much for being on Occupations.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Terrific learning about what it is that you do. Please join us again for another episode of Occupations right here.
Occupations has been brought to you by lotsofmaps.com. Please follow Occupations the Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to find information about our next episode or to see what past episodes are available.